Rhys Wallace from the Career Liberty Council, which is Montgomery, Delaware, and Philadelphia counties in Pennsylvania. I worked at Camp Hart for 6 summers, 2014 to 2019. It's now part of Musser Scout Reservation, so it includes, as some of you probably know, Camp Delmont. So Delmont and Hart merged with the council mergers in 96. Valley Forge Council and Philadelphia councils merged, and then they created the larger property. I'm also the advisor to the Navy Lodge 1 History Committee, something that I'm very proud about. A lot of fun working with the youth and working with folks like Mark Chaluti, Phil Hittner, and Mike Comfort on various history projects. So we'll start with the namesake of the camp, Dr. Charles D. Hart. Not the best photo of him, but I have some better photos of him later. With some background on him. Um, he earned the Silver Buffalo from Nashville in 1929. So he was involved in scouting in Philadelphia since pretty much the beginning, so 1911, and he was, I think, involved until like the late 30s, early 40s. He was involved for a very long time in Philadelphia scouting. He was a member of the Regional Council for Region 2. He's quite well known for he had a golden book of scouting heroes, which included like scouts who saved lives, like everyday acts of courage, and also those who served in the military. I actually found his golden book with their names and everything when we were moving the council office to our new location in King of Prussia, and we now have that safely secured uh, at the new office. Dr. Hart was also known for developing the ideal scout statue, helping with that. So the Mackenzie statue, as it's commonly known as, we'll have some photos of that later, just so you can see it and be like, "Oh, that statue." Um, he was also known for developing Treasure Island as a camping by troop basis. And that was kind of an example for the rest of the country. Because I guess it was more provisional camping, as we would call it today, across the country or in some of the early scout camps. Dr. Hart kind of developed making it troops camp as a troop and all that kind of stuff. And then some photos. So from when he was awarded the distinguished the Silver Buffalo for distinguished service. Um, some of the programs from that. Thank you, Mark Chaluti, for the photos of that. Here's some photos from the internet of various Mackenzie statues. The one on the right, I believe, is the one on 22nd and Winter Street in Philadelphia. That one is now in storage. We did when we moved back Philadelphia, closed down the Philadelphia office, and kind of moved to the old Firestone Center across from Valley Forge National Park in Chester County. We stored that statue. So that's in storage right now. What we're going to do with it, I'm not quite sure. That's above my pay grade. I forgot to mention, I'm also a district executive, so I work for the council and I also volunteer for the council. So it's a nice gray area I walk, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Love scouting to death. And then some other awards that were presented to Charles D. Hart for his distinguished service. So you'll kind of get the sense that Dr. Hart, quite the guy in scouting before Camp Hart was even Camp Hart. So Camp Hart was purchased in 1930, but I always like to cover some of the prehistory of the camp. So this looks like just like a bunch of rocks, but these are actually farmers' walls when they would clear the land. That's now Musser Scout Reservation, Camp Hart. So funny thing is the colonial government would actually tax you differently based on how much quote unquote rock land you had and how much arable land you had. You can imagine the tax rate was cheaper on rock land since it was less productive for farming. So the farmers would often clear the fields of all the rocks they could move and then do their best to farm it anyways. There's also lots of quarry sites scattered throughout the camp, especially at Hart and Delmont. Not so much at our third camp at Garrison that makes up Musser Scout Reservation. So you can see some of the chisel marks and some of there's the divot behind the big stone. Here is another quarry site. So it's just literal quarry sites. Here's one that was deeper in the woods that I found while just playing capture the flag or manhunt with the camp staff. But yeah, back to the property when the scouts were using it. So again, it was purchased in 1930. Dr. Hart was instrumental in recommending this specific tract of land And this was needed because there was an increased volume of campers. And if you can imagine, Philadelphia Council, the other camp we had was Treasure Island Scout Reservation. So you can only realistically fit so many scouts on an island throughout the summer. Even if your summer is like 8 weeks, you can only fit so many people, right? So there was increased demand for camping space, so they looked for more land. And then there's Dr. Hart on the platform to the right. I believe this was taken from Flag Day or like a 4th of July celebration, if I remember the notes from the photo correctly. So the camp was purchased in 1930, but it didn't really open as a proper summer camp till 32. This was because they were trying to build a dam across what is now the Yenami Creek to create a proper lake for boating activities. Um, so in 32, they actually opened it up, and they originally Camp Hart was used for those boys that were staying longer than their troops at Treasure Island. So if they were staying for 2 weeks, for example, at camp, they would be sent to Hart rather than Treasure Island. And then the picture here to the right is Hart Lodge. It's still standing today. We use it mostly for the ranger shop and storage and all kinds of other things. But the boys were actually housed in Hart Lodge in the summer, and that was their dining hall. It was their spot for camp. In the photo, you'll see the ranger, Perry Long, uh, towards the barn. He was the first ranger. We'll talk about Ranger Perry Long as we get through some of the presentation. Um, and this is a photo of them, of the contractors building the dam that's still there today across the Yenami Creek to create Lake at Hart. So if you can imagine, a hot barn in the middle of summer wasn't exactly the best camping facility for the boys. So they actually started to develop what is called Pioneer Camp, which is across the lake that they built on what was became known as the east side. Uh, so Pioneer Camp was a bunch of campsites named after pioneers like Daniel Boone and stuff. And then they built the Chiefs Camps, which was named after different indigenous folks as well. And they also built the trading posts and staff lean-tos and the different staff sites throughout the there's 2 staff sites on the east side that they built, one for each camp. And that's a photo from an early Hart camper of the boathouse and the lake once it was completed. Um, Mark, this was on the police family. It came from their grandmother, whose father, so their great grandfather, who was a camper there. That's a map of the east side. It's not the best map. I have a better map in the next slide. But here is Hart Lodge and the barn, and then you can kind of see across the lake, the creek. They built the east side Chiefs Camp first, then Pioneers, and they kind of just went for it. So you can see the different names of the campsites. This was really cool to find because this was in a camp staff yearbook from 1959, and it tells us when everything was built, which was really cool. So like the trading post opened in 36. You can see the health lodge and everything was open in like 53. Um, there was also a lodge house for Yenami Lodge once, well, for the away activities and things. And the camp staff would often eat their meals there, and some of the senior staff would stay there. This photo is the East Side Parade Field from best I could track down. So you can kind of see it was a little more rustic. And then the east side was known for these beautiful pavilions. So these stones were cast offs from the stone masons or from farmers' walls. Their first ranger, Perry Long, and his brothers would often carry these rocks across wherever they found them to in baskets on their back. Um, to build the foundation. So just about every Adirondack, lean-to, whatever you want to call them, every pavilion had stone foundations like this, built by Perry Long and his brothers. And then a lot of the structures, like you can kind of see here, was made out of cedar. So it was known for that as well. And these were like kind of like kitchens that were used by and eating areas that were used by the different troops that would stay in camp. East Camp was a cook your own kind of thing. You'll see in some of the camp staff photos, the camp staffs were really small. Like in 34, the camp staff was maybe 5, 6 people. They kind of had content experts on nature, hike master, camp craft, as they called it back then, and aquatics, different things like that. Um, and the troops would just, and the patrols would just kind of say, hey, we want to go on a hike today. Let's go see the hike master, the nature guy, so we can do a nature hike. Or if they want to do aquatics that day, they would just do aquatics with the aquatics experts on staff. So it's a very build your own kind of program, cook your own. And the East Side was known for cook your own for quite some time, even when the rest of the camp was built in the 50s on the West Side. So some more, I don't won't use the word famous, but some important people from the Hart Camp staff. So Thomas Cairns, he was the first National Vigil Honor Secretary. He was the equivalent of the National Chief is today in 1933. He was part of I believe, the inaugural class in 1940, the DSA. I believe that's when the DSA was first given out. And you can look through the camp staff photos and you can see him in his chair for many years just at camp helping out. So I pulled these from the 39 and 41 uh, camp staff photos. So you can kind of see him there in the right corner. So as the camp grew, the camp staff grew. This led to eventually the development of the West Side through a massive capital campaign to build a pool and a dining hall and just everything on the West Side we'll see on the map. And this is the camp staff in front of Unami Lodge, which was the lodge house for the OA. And it was also where a lot of the camp staff would sleep and eat their meals and things like that. It was also a winter cabin for troops to rent out. One of my favorite things from the East Side is the Corman Chapel. It's a Jewish chapel. Um, it's quite a beautiful site. It's not used anymore. Most of the East Side has been left to go back to nature, but you can imagine, you can kind of see the big rock that the I don't know the technical word for the box that houses the Torah. That was a representative of Mount Sinai. There's the different pillars for the 12 points of the Scout Law and the different tribes of Israel. And then if you zoomed back, like far back from this photo, you would see that, where the benches are from like the platform, the stone platform, there was actually a rock wall um, around the whole site that made a Star of David. So it was quite a beautiful site. And the east side of Hart was commonly used by Jewish units. Jewish scouting used to be very big in the Philadelphia area. It's kind of on a rebound, but it was huge back in the day. So they had a need for their own chapel, and they had their own, services in camp, just like Catholics and Protestants would have their own services in camp as well. And then this is the west side of Hart, which is what most people who visit uh, Camp Hart today know Hart as. So you can see when different things were built, different program areas like nature, handicraft. There was a new staff site, all kinds of cabins, like Little Rocky and the family cabins. There was a campfire area that was built in 57 behind the cook's cabin, which is no longer used. Our campfire area is now behind the pool. And then you can kind of see the different sites. This was so early that they were just numbered, not even named. Nowadays, each campsite has its own name. Those that have two words in the name, like Yellow Bear, Dick Smith, uh, Red Fox, all have a cabin. Those that just have one word in the name, like Pheasant, um, just don't have a cabin. They might have an Adirondack or two, but they don't have like a dedicated cabin. So you can kind of get the sense of as camping and scouting grew, there was a need for more camping in the 30s. This led to, the development of the east side. And then once they needed even more space, they started to develop the west side. This is, you can see Hart Lodge in the background here. And this is some of the developers and some of the council members. Haven't been able to track down who's who, but this is our pump house that we still use today. It's up on the hill. So basically, even if we lose power, gravity will feed the water. We'll get the water down to where it needs to go. So that's one advantage of how they designed the water system at camp. In 1964, they built not the Jewish chapel, the Christian chapel, where Catholics and Protestants would have their services. You can kind of see that if you imagine like when you're in church and you have your hands clasped in prayer, the uh, the structure kind of looks like that in general as well. So it's supposed to look like hands clasped in prayer. There's the cross, there's the little podium. Um, there's a nice stone wall that kind of circles around the structure as well. Um, there used to be a lecture and a dedicated Bible. Nowadays, we don't have like the podium or like a dedicated camp Bible. People just bring their own kind of thing. And then you can imagine there was a need to connect the east and west sides. So this was Bouncing Betsy, uh, not a Bouncing Betty, not like the mine. Uh, it was also known as Mambo because I guess it would shake and people would look like they're doing the Mambo. Before this was built, folks would just take a boat across the lake and get to each side. You can imagine that took a lot more effort. Some of the old timers told me that they called the boating service Perry's Ferry, and after the camp ranger. So you can kind of get a sense of some of the culture at camp. So I think what you all want to see is the memorabilia. My favorite stuff to collect is the postcards. So you can see the Unami Lodge House here in the foreground. In the background was the country store or the trading post. Uh, both buildings no longer stand. This road, where you can kind of see this car right here, is actually a public road. So we can't prevent people from using it. So oftentimes people would break in and vandalize the cabins or the country store. So about 2025, so about 15 years ago, uh, just due to safety too, they safely tore them down. Um, and some more postcards. You can kind of see the ranges of the chapel, the Christian chapel here. This is what a lot of the Adirondacks look like on the east side of camps. They have like a stone foundation, uh, and they have, the open face siding. So that's what pioneer camps looked like on the east side. More pictures of the pool of the Corman Memorial Chapel to the Jewish chapels. You can kind of get a sense of how large of a space it was. You can see the boating area, the dining hall, of course. And you can even see some of the neckerchiefs uh, that the kids would wear from Hart. And one of my favorite things is that Hart was used for everybody. So you can see scouts of different races all together, uh, camping together, which I think is pretty awesome. Um, and this is just a loose collection of different variations of some common Hart patches. The logo for Hart Scout Reservation was the square lashing on two poles. Uh, these aren't in any particular order. It's just these are some of the various uh, differences you can find. So sometimes camp staff would make their own patch and use the logo. This one right here is probably one of the older ones just because of the material and the coloring. Um, and then other ones like this are pretty old, but you'll get some newer ones like this one, and then you'll get some more modern ones that were made in like the 2000s. This one should have been like the 80s, where they made it the background red, uh, and this is like these two we sell in the trading post at camp currently, so it gives you a sense of some of the patches. So remember when I talked about the nature leaders, the camp craft leader, the aquatics leader, like the experts, content experts at camp, folks would have these kind of patches. I don't have all the variations of these. Mark Chaluti does, so luckily I can borrow stuff from him whenever I need to display stuff. And you'll kind of see some other variations of the square lashing on different patches. This patch is kind of important because Cub Adventures, uh, when the national office was in New Jersey, uh, Hart was commonly used for experimental camping, like Weeblos Weeks or Cub Family Weekends or different things like that throughout the years, especially in the 70s and 80s, if I remember correctly. Uh, so about 2004 or 5 was the last Boy Scout summer camp at Hart, and then it was mostly used for Cubs camping, which proved useful because Hart and muster as a whole is in our council footprint. So it's actually in our council. So that's convenient for most folks to go to muster to Camp Hart for weekend camping and summer camp and things like that. I was part of the first generation of Cub campers that only knew Hart as a Cub summer camp and things like that. So I like to collect the Cub Scout stuff because that's how I got my start in scouting. Some of the cooler and rarer stuff is some of the staff neckerchiefs I've been very lucky to find. You'll see them in order, so 55, 56, 57, left to right, going onwards and upwards. I've been able to get some. These mostly came from a gentleman donated in the council and just said like, hey, gave us a letter that said, hey, give these to someone who would find use for them. So I bought them off the council, the history committee, and I used them in my, uh, well, in our displays as a committee. We do little pop-up museums at different events. Uh, so that's the kind of stuff we do. If you want more details, I can answer any questions you might have. But kind of what started this presentation was back in for the 90th, so that would have been 2020, I wrote a history of Camp Hart, updated it for the 95th, which we recently celebrated back in June. A great event. We had campers and camp staff from the late 50s in attendance onwards. So it's a great time to get the guys back in camp and the families, wives, moms, things like that too. So we have copies of this in print. You can email the history committee at history@unamylodge.org if you'd like a copy. We just ask for $5 to cover the print costs, and then any shipping, whatever that would cost, that I can calculate and get back to you. And then once all of our print copies are sold, we typically put the book onto the Amazon Kindle store as an ebook. More about the committee. So our mission is to preserve the Camp Council and OA history of the Creator Liberty Council. So the 3 counties we serve as a council. We do everything from pop-up museums to podcast episodes to digitizing, lots and lots of digitizing, photo slides or old documents. Um, we're working on a self-guided history hike for Musser Scout Reservation, which will then turn into a larger project for Resica Falls Scout Reservation. That's like 4,000 acres. Musser is about 1,200. So we're trying to start with the smaller camp and then work our way up to the bigger camp. You can visit us at unamylodge.org/history to kind of see all of our links and see what we're up to. We're on Facebook and Instagram. We have a Facebook group where different folks, post local history things or they ask questions like, hey, is this a UNAMI issue? And then usually Mark Trulli chimes in like, no, that's not a UNAMI issue. And people ask various questions. And again, we have podcasts on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much every other platform, some pretty obscure ones as well. Other publications that might be future talks or if people are interested in. I wrote a history of Jewish scouting in the Creator Liberty Council, a history of the Catholic scouting in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. Very soon, like by the end of the summer, we'll have a history of African American scouting in the Creator Liberty Council published in print. And then some things I'm in the initial stages of researching is the history of women and girls in scouting in the council, and then also a history of scouting for people with disabilities, physical, mental, anything really, to see how scouting has served those communities as well. So that's pretty much my presentation. So what was really cool is we recently scanned what was the council newsletter, like magazine, the Quaker City Scout. I recently scanned all of those and was able to dive into them and read them. And pretty much from 1932, when they had the experimental camp at Hart with putting the boys in the barn and just running a program, they had 3 predominantly African American troops in attendance, and the council president actually went to go visit them at camp, and they had a photo all together. Unfortunately, it's a really small photo, so I can't like replicate it or like reprint it anywhere. Um, but yeah, it was pretty much integrated. I've heard some rumors here and there of like maybe it wasn't as integrated or this or that, but to everything I've found, like photo wise and document wise, not just hearsay, uh, Hart was always an integrated camp.